Hello, everybody. My name is Jeff Landy. I'm the Borough Manager at Mount Pleasant. Um, I'm going to bring you a show today a little differently than we've done for the last 7 years. I always introduce the show of myself and Jerry. Well, as most of you know, Jerry's no longer with us. So, but so you know, we're also going to keep Jerry's part of the show active, and we're going to keep calling it the Jeff and Jerry Show, at least for the next period of time. And Jerry will always be part of the show. During the show, you may see me ask Jerry questions or comment to Jerry, because for 7 years that's what I did. But today, you're going to see a show with many of Jerry's friends, and we're going to tell stories. And this is one of the hardest shows that I've ever done. Jerry was not only a co-host, but he was a friend. And it's important that we get through this first show so that we can move on. Jerry was proud of the show. He looked forward to the show. And thanks to Armstrong for continuing the show. A lot of people have asked us over the past year or so when the show was coming back. And Jerry would say, "Oh, we'll be back. You know, we want to keep doing the show." And he was right. And we are back. So our first guest is Diana Lucia. And Diana's been on the show probably 3 or 4 times. One of the best shows we ever did was a game show. And I know a lot of people saw the show because it was one of the shows that everybody told me how much they enjoyed it. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the other stuff about Jerry. We learned an awful lot from Diane about how they met and their life as a husband and wife. This is going to be maybe a little different, a little harder for sure. But we're going to try to show you another side of Jerry. And hopefully her and I can get through this segment. Well, Diane, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, we couldn't do the first show without you. So, obviously things have changed a lot in the past several months, and everybody knows about it. So, how are you doing?
It's hard. It's very difficult. I can tell you that much. Yeah, I miss him, especially in the evenings. You know, we had our set routine. We did certain things, and I've been trying to keep busy. You know, I got a part-time job at the library, and I work 15 hours a week. You know, when I'm around people, you know, I can deal with it. But it's when I get home in the night, he's not there, and it's just so lonely, very different.
You know, I'm sure.
It's a new life.
Oh, it is, and I think you're going to hear from some of our other guests later on that. You know, your husband was a part of everybody's life.
Oh, yeah.
And when we would go around to different communities in Westmoreland County, Fayette County, we traveled everywhere together. I mean, a lot of people knew him. And, you know, whether people knew Mount Pleasant from the Doughboy statue or from the Glass Festival or the wall, the Veterans Wall, it was, hey, there's the mayor of Mount Pleasant. And I think he enjoyed a lot of that.
He did.
And he was proud to be the mayor.
Yeah, he was. He loved Mount Pleasant. He really did. And he loved Mount Pleasant. He loved that fire department. And he wanted to make those 50 years. So
yeah. Well,
he made 46. He wanted that 50 so bad.
Well, I think there's going to be the one thing that I was happy about is we dedicated the Borough campus.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to tell a little bit about that story?
Well, Jeff informed me about a couple months before that, and I had to get him away for the weekend. So we went to my daughter's. She was in on it, kept him away, for the weekend. But then Monday, we got back, and I didn't know what to do with him,
Yeah.
'cause if him not going up to that Borough building.
I know.
So Kevin Fox took him up to his hunting camp for the day, that day. And then I said to him, because I was working at the library, I said, Jerry, there's something going on at the library at 7 o'clock that, we want you to come up. So we get up to the parking lot, and there's all these people there. And he still didn't catch on, though. We pulled in, and we got out of the car, and he kind of said, like, well, what's going on, And I didn't say anything, and he started going towards the library.
Yeah.
He said, well, aren't we going to the library? I said, no. I said, look, and there his sister was over there. Patty was over there. And then he knew something was going on.
But he wasn't sure, though.
No, he had no clue about it.
When we started that,
He was so surprised.
when we started that project, it wasn't hard to keep it a secret because I kept it a secret. I think I only told 2 people until we got the thing
Right.
made. And then that Friday, whenever you took him away,
Yeah.
we put the sign up for the street department, put the sign up for him. So I said, Diane, you can't let him come
Yeah,
and see
I know.
it because the dedication was going to be at 6 o'clock on Monday. And that's how you end up getting someone to take him to
And
the camp.
keeping him from the fire station or the Borough building, because he was there every day,
Yeah.
every single day.
Well, I don't think there's any honor that this borough has done to this point in the years since 1828 that we've honored somebody more than calling it the borough campus,
I know.
the Jerry Lucia borough campus.
I know.
So it happened to be a good thing it turned out, and he enjoyed it, and we joked.
Oh, he
You know,
really enjoyed it. He really
so-
did. And he kept talking about it for days afterwards. He said, you mean you were in on this? And I said, yeah. He just couldn't get over it.
Well, the stories that you have about Jerry, how about some of the stories I know you probably know more than a lot of us know about what he did for people. I don't think people realize, the mayor's position isn't somebody who goes around
No.
and does things for people, but Jerry,
I mean,
that was a big part of his life, wasn't it?
Jerry was a kind person. He was very kind. I mean, he would open people. One time, we were going to my daughter's. You were talking about opening the cars. One time, we were going to my daughter's, and we were going through Chambersburg, and somebody couldn't get into their car on Main Street in Chambersburg, and he stopped and he opened up the car. I mean, he was just such a kind and caring person. He cared about everybody. When I was down, if I was down, he'd bring me up. He'd
Yeah.
say, oh, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Everything. I would be like the down. He was always like optimistic all
Yeah.
the time.
There was a time when he had his knee problem. I think that's when he got a little bit down about some things because he couldn't get around
He couldn't
like he
get
was used to
around as
getting
much,
around.
yeah.
And I remember at the Glass Festival, we would do a show up there every year, and so the show would be where we would walk around and Rick would take the film of us, and me and Jerry
Yeah.
would stop at every food booth and,
I
and
remember.
would eat. Okay.
I remember.
Well, when he had his knee problem, he couldn't keep up. So we would, I'm 3 booths ahead eating, and he's back 3 booths later, trying to finish up. Well, we ended up stopping at Sandhill Berries. He loved that pie. So he said, I'll sit here and eat. You guys go ahead. And then when we came back around, which was probably 20 minutes later, he got another piece of pie. Okay. And so we were joking about how much pie he ate. But, that was probably the very few times that when he had that knee problem that he wasn't himself able to get around. But he loved the festival, didn't he?
Oh, my goodness, yeah, he loved the festival. I mean, we talked about it for months before, it was going to happen. There'll never be anybody else like him, well, not for me anyway,
Yeah.
But
I think he enjoyed, I tell you what else I think he enjoyed. He enjoyed the community bringing it together. I remember he would tell stories about
Yeah.
the 9/11, how he was able to get them, all the
Yeah.
preachers and priests together and pray at the gazebo when that 9/11
Yeah.
happened. And then he carried that tradition of that ceremony, that tribute.
Oh,
He,
9/11 every year.
he was the one that
Yeah.
pushed
Oh,
that.
yeah, he did.
And he wanted to make sure we continue to do it. And
And you were
even,
saying before about him wanting the ones in Mount Pleasant, and he wanted those merchants to do good so
I know he did.
bad.
I know.
You know, he always wanted them to do good.
Well, we spent a lot of time. I remember when I became borough manager, he said, this is what we need to do. And on the big list, toward the bottom, was he wanted to rejuvenate the east end of town.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted that east end of town not to take second fiddle to Main Street,
Yeah.
up at the middle of town. And so we concentrated. I remember we would spend years, the past several years, concentrating on cleaning up that end of town and try to get businesses down there. And I know he would like the idea of the waterway because he hated the way that Shoup's Run looked. And he was proud of that east end of town as much as any part of town.
Oh, yeah.
I know he liked it when Levins came back.
Oh, yes.
He felt that was a major thing
Yes.
for town.
Yes. And not a day goes by. If I'm up at the library, I work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Somebody doesn't come in and say something
I know.
about him every single day.
Isn't that the hardest part, though?
It is the hardest part because you have to, I keep reliving
I know.
that same thing over and over.
I know, and they mean well.
I know they mean
But the hardest part is they remind
Yeah.
you and they
Yeah.
talk about things that is
like
tough
that
to.
morning, I'll never forget that morning. It was the worst day of my life.
Well, I remember I got the call from George, our police chief, and Jerry would call me. Listen, Jerry and I talked whether it was 7 in the morning or at midnight.
Yeah.
But when I got the call and George said there's a problem, and I said, well, George would say to me that before, but not at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
He said, are you ready to? Are you dressed and everything? I said, yeah. He said, are you ready to? Can you come down here to Jerry's house? Well, I knew that was not a good sign.
Yeah.
But I know that from that day on, the borough has felt empty.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jeff, the night before, he was telling me they had 3 fire calls. He was telling me about the meeting. I mean, it was just like normal.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think people will remember? And I know this is a tough question. I know this is this could be anything. But if you had to pinpoint one thing, what do you think his family will remember? And all his family, his sisters. What do you think they'll remember most about Jerry?
About him always wanting to do things for people. He was always there for them, for his family. Yeah, for anybody in the neighborhood. Anybody that he could help. I mean, he helped other people. Well, you remember, like Bob and
Sure.
Danny, and
He took care of
took
people
to the doctor's offices.
that wasn't even a relative of his.
Yeah. I mean, he did so much for people.
Do you remember when he first got on council? Why he got on council?
Yeah, because of this water problem in Ramsey Terrace. Oh, yes, I remember.
And we talk about people getting on council for reasons. And,
Yeah.
and Jerry said, I got on council because I was getting a water problem in my basement.
Then we tried to get a school bus for Ramsey Terrace to come down because there were so many kids, but we never got that. But it did stop like up
Up
the
at
end
Church
of
Street.
Church Street, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the water problem in Ramsey Terrace was how he got started.
He has a sister right now.
Well, his other sister, Annette, passed away in April.
Right. And how's his son and daughter doing?
No, but Jerry, Nicole, well, it's hard.
Yeah.
And then my daughter living away, it's hard for her. I try to talk to her a couple times a week. And Jerry, my son's been but they're both supportive.
Yeah.
You
You remember any other fun stories? I mean, we talked about how you met Jerry and your honeymoon, and Now that he's not here, you want to tell a little bit of risque stuff about Jerry that won't embarrass him? You have anything to say about that, Diane? Because I have a vision of what I think I remember some of that stuff being, but the one thing we would laugh about that whole show, and he would say to me, you were getting a little edgy on some of those questions. I said, yeah, I wanted to embarrass you, But any other stories that you didn't have a chance to tell?
People are still talking about that show,
Yeah.
that interview with me.
Yeah.
Because they were still showing it.
Yeah.
And people think I was just. I said that show was like over a year.
Yeah. How about the game show? You cheated.
Oh well.
But but it was okay. And when Rick and I were talking about it, Rick challenged you guys again.
I know.
And so
we would have done it this month.
We would have done it this month
Yeah.
because we were going to do the anniversary show and have another competition. But Jerry
fun.
blamed Rick for cheating, and and Jerry was looking, and we know Jerry was cheating, but it was one thing. It was fun, and I think that's what my relationship with Jerry was. It was always fun.
Yeah.
You have something that you got that you showed me. You want to show the camera?
Well, you had that on your phone. Rest in peace, Jerry.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's like this. Okay. I don't know if you can see it or not. I got this done by Devin in the Borough building.
She rents from us.
Right. She's very good artist, if I can put a plug in for her. And I always wanted to get like a tattoo.
But Jerry told me you had another tattoo.
No, I didn't.
Well, he told me you had one on your bum.
Oh.
That he...
Yeah. I've been wanting to get one probably for 4 years, but I couldn't find anything that it had to mean something for me to get it.
Sure.
So I was, the last 3 years I've been going on Pinterest and going on the internet and looking at things and that. Well, finally, when I saw that little rest in peace, Jerry, the round emblem, it was like this piece here.
Right.
I thought, well, finally that's something that means something to me. But I wanted it personalized for myself. So Devin came up with this picture. It actually looks like a brooch around here. And then the rest in peace, 38 means like 38 chief.
Right.
But I didn't get chief put in because, Jerry is my husband, so I got it personalized.
Right.
So, it took about 2.5 hours. And, I'm glad I got it. Everybody loves it.
Well, I was, when you showed me, I was shocked.
Well,
Because
it is shocking.
it surprised me a
at
little
first.
bit,
Yes. Because
So,
you wouldn't think I would do this.
I wouldn't think that,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, well-
I think it's great though, and I think
Yeah.
everybody thinks it's great that I
Yeah.
talked to. But
Yeah.
it was a little shocking, that you would get a tattoo, number one. But
Yeah.
but what you did was perfect.
Yeah,
So
I thought so.
yeah. Any other again? I'll ask you again. Any other stories that you could think about
Oh,
after we
my.
did the last show with you? That
Trying to think.
well, I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you
Well,
asked me to
first
come.
of all,
Like I said, it's not easy. I haven't changed anything at home. No, I haven't. The pillowcase, I took the whole pillow off, and I'll keep that. All his clothes are in the same place. The phone's still plugged in. I still talk to him every night. He was getting ready to this is funny, he was getting ready to put Christmas lights outside.
Jerry put Christmas lights up.
Well, yeah. About 2 days before that, he was getting ready to put Christmas lights up. Then he was getting them, how one won't light. He said, "Oh, hell with this," and he threw them down. And they're still there. He threw them.
We would have did a show on him putting up Christmas lights because I would have laughed the whole show.
Yeah, well, he did every year in front of the house.
Did he?
Oh, yeah. But he never got a chance to this. After he threw them down and said, "The hell with this," I just left them there. And then, about 2 days later, he was gone.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you though for making me part of the funeral, and I appreciate that. I mean,
Yeah.
the eulogy, first of all, it's hard for me to get through.
I know it was.
But the eulogy meant a lot to me.
Yeah, I know it did.
So, and but those are memories that are always hold. We'll never forget, Jerry,
No.
and we'll never forget the memories. And
No.
all our guests today are going to be good, and they'll all tell stories that I think people will also remind
Yeah.
of all the good times Jerry did. And as we wrap up the show, I always would say, well, what do you think, Jerry? And well, Jerry would say, the usual, if he liked the show, or he'd talk about how important it was to get information out to the public. And he was my crutch.
Well, what used to kill me sometime? My kids could be getting ready, for the show, putting a shirt on and everything. I'd say, Jerry, well, who are you going to do? Well, I don't know. I'll get somebody. I'd say, well, you mean you don't have anybody? This is like the day of the show.
Well,
you call people like sporadically.
Well, here's what happened. I mean, a lot of times we would say, here's who we're going to get. And then, the schedules wouldn't work out.
Right.
And so they'd call and say, hey, Jerry, I can't do the show. So he'd call me, and I'd say, well, Jerry, you got to find somebody. I mean,
Yeah.
We're scheduled to do the show. And then he'd usually find somebody, or I'd get a restaurant. He loved to do the shows on the restaurants, even though I did a lot of the eating. He'd blame me for the eating, but he believe me, he ate his share, But there's one thing I want to play. And
That's it. That's what I got.
yeah.
This one.
Swan County Department of Public Safety.
I'm sorry. Oh, I hope it didn't.
Swan County Department of Public Safety on the air with an announcement. This will be the last call for Chief Jerry Lucia of the Mount Pleasant Volunteer Fire Department. Chief Lucia answered his last alarm on December 17th, 2021. Chief Lucia served the Mount Pleasant Volunteer Fire Department and community for 46 years. Chief Lucia will be deeply missed by his brother and sister firefighters, family, and friends. Chief Lucia has completed his last alarm and has returned safely home to eternity for his final call to watch over his family, friends, and fellow firefighters. May he protect us all from above. 30 acknowledges the call. Swan County Department of Public Safety clear.
See, a lot of people don't wait till that. That's
I know.
him at the end.
I know. Well, so far, we got through the first segment, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show.
Oh, I was really fell for it. And,
You fall pretty hard.
oh, I fell hard.
Did you?
I slipped and fell.
Well, this was. Well, think about it. That day was in May. You got it. You proposed, I'm assuming, in July, and you got married in November. Well, that was a whirlwind summer.
Right, it was.
And I had a good job at the time. I was working in a
Well, you were
steel
rich.
mill.
You had money, right?
So we thought.
I had money till I got married.
Always one of our favorites, Jerry. Has been here many, many years as far as a vendor for the Glass Festival, but also a Mount Pleasant business. It's the Sandhill Berries booth. And I know you stop here 3 or 4 times a day. Okay? Huh?
I
But,
bring my pies home every Thursday.
I guess you do. But as you can see, the stuff that they sell, and another example of the kind of products you can buy there.
Robbie.
You know, and Robert just shoved us in my direction.
Did he really?
I wasn't even like, I couldn't do anything about it. He just shoved it to us. So
We have to have our cameraman. Which one would you like, sir?
I think is that an apple?
Dutch apple.
Dutch apple.
Okay.
Give that a try.
So we're going to take a second. We're going to look at it, and then we're going to eat it because you got only a second to look at it.
Yeah, that's all you get. Like
Okay, we just finished our pie, Rick and I, and Jerry's working on his second piece of pie.
Well, look,
So
those look pretty good.
he'll finish up the second piece, and we can go on. How you like your second piece of pie, Jerry?
No, this is
Okay,
my
that's
first
very
one
good,
on
Jerry. And we'll continue moving on. You want to catch up to us?
I'll catch up.
So let's first talk to Joe Bauer, who now is the president of the Mount Pleasant Volunteer Fire Department. So Joe, you've been around Jerry a lot longer, even before you got into the fire department.
Yeah, about 25 years maybe, I guess I've been associated with him.
So when you became president, that was a little different dynamics with you with working with Jerry, because prior to you getting in, it was more of a friendship and the Glass Festival.
Glass Festival, council,
Yeah.
Borough Council. Yeah, it was different with the fire department, you know, because we could joke around a little bit more down there than we could at council chambers. You know, he was a good chief. He was a good mayor. But I think most of all, he was a good friend. I mean, even though we worked together in the fire department in my years on council, we would talk about other things, you know, just things going around the town, or what he was going down to Florida on a vacation trip or going out to his daughters. I knew pretty much I talked to him about every day at some point of time. You know, and I was in the hospital with the COVID, you know, he talked to my wife every day to see how I was doing. So not only is he our chief, he was concerned about every man's welfare also. We had a couple guys up there that had COVID, and he would try to find out daily how they were doing. So he was truly a good friend, good person.
I think Jerry's love for the fire department came from him wanting to see a safety issue with his town and make sure that, you know, the fire department was always there for that. Plus, the fire department does a lot of extra things in the borough, like putting up banners and parade control and all that.
Yeah, Jerry, we were doing a lot. Jerry got us into a lot of stuff,
Yeah,
that's
he-
for sure. He got us into a lot
And
of stuff.
sometimes the last minute.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
find out that day.
Well, sometimes you get a text at 4 o'clock, and, hey, I need you at 4:45. You know what I mean? It's like, geez, you know, you're trying to get home from work and do some of this stuff that that's part of the fire department's motto. He always thought it was good to do community service, because when you ask the community for donations, they kind of remember that you always help them out when you go pump out a basement and do some of that kind of stuff that you typically don't do in the fire department. So he was always good to help somebody out. And, you know, I want to go back to, he's such a good chief that guys respected him, and he would get a detail out to do whatever we needed to do. I can't remember too many times when he didn't have enough guys. So, I mean, you know, we still sit up there today, and we have our meetings today, like, you know, where's Jerry? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You still can't believe that he's gone. So,
You know, when you talk about the fire department, I think he wanted, like you said, he wanted to make the fire department more than just they worry about fighting fires. How do you think that's gonna? Do you think it'll carry on, Joe, without Jerry being there?
I think the way things are going, even if Jerry would have still been around, the way the state's moving with some of the regulations for firemen, some of that stuff was going to go away. And I think insurance dictates a lot and all that kind of thing. So I think some of it would go away. You just can't pump out a lot of basements now. We get calls now about fuel oil spills. We can't put our trucks in that kind of danger. So we don't do them kind of details anymore. But I think for the most part, when someone calls us, we go. I get a lot of calls now. Jerry was forever giving our room out up there, our meeting room
I know.
out to use for meetings. And we have a rule, we don't let the meeting room out unless we know who you are. I'm getting them calls today now and you hate to tell them no, because it's happened so many years that he took care of these groups. You just don't want to tell them no.
Yeah.
So you try to live his legacy, and you do what he did. You know, one of the things we're doing for the fire department right now, we did get a flag from the state fire commissioner for a line of duty death for Jerry. There's a rule in our fire department, the only pictures hung on the wall in the meeting room is 50-year members and auxiliary. We're gonna take a corner and hang that flag and also get a picture of Jerry, and we're gonna dedicate a corner to him. Because it's actually the first line of duty death we've had in our fire department since its history. And his longevity as mayor, which I think was 30-some years.
36.
Yeah, so, we talked, Jerry was shooting for that 50-year mark. He was only 4 years away from that, and, but his legacy will, as long as the older guys are around, even some of the younger guys, I think 20 years from now, they'll be talking about the chief.
Well, thanks, Joe. And now we want to talk to George. George, you're the police chief.
Yes.
And you recently got that position, 4 years ago?
Yeah,
something
about
like that?
3 or 4 years ago, yes.
How was your relationship with Jerry being the mayor who's in charge of the police department?
Well, we always had a good relationship, whether it was a working relationship or just a friendship, type of relationship. I got hired here in 1996, worked part-time for 3 years, and then actually got on full-time. And Jerry was very instrumental in helping me out to get a full-time job and so on and so forth. We always kept an open lines of communication. He'd call me up and see how things are going, stop up the station, and not only ask me about police work, but how my parents were doing, or how's my son doing in sports, and my wife, and things like that. And we would just talk about everyday stuff, and and then obviously we would get down to stuff about the police department. We would talk about and go over some things, and kind of keep them updated what's going on, how things are moving along, and things like that. So we had a good relationship, basically with everything that we did.
Being around Jerry, I think he sort of let you do your job, though, didn't he? He didn't really interfere.
No, he never did interfere. He'd come up and ask me a couple of questions and so on and so forth. But he'd always say, "Look, you're trained to do what you do, so go ahead and do it." He never interfered. Never came up the department and told us how to run things or anything like that. He was just very supportive of us. And always knew that we could do the job, and always let us do the job.
If there's one thing that we used to laugh about, and I know you and I talked about it, Jerry would always like to get the tickets from people and sometimes say, "Hey, George, you think you can take care of this for us?"
Yeah,
which
twice.
sometimes it can be overwhelming when because that's how Jerry was. And both of you talked about the friendship. Jerry's title in town can just be added to the friends of the community. He did a lot. He had a lot of friends, but I remember he'd bring those tickets up to you, and
every once in a while. It happened.
Well,
but like Joe said earlier, Jerry's going to be missed. I've been working daylight for the last probably 7, 8, maybe 10 years, and I'd always see his car riding around with the light on top of it, and he'd ride through the Borough parking lot when I'm getting out of the police car, and would stand there and talk, and it just it definitely seems different and still does.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's always going to be different because you're always going to think about him one way or another, or this day or that day. So, but he was a good man. He did a lot for the police department, did a lot for the borough. Obviously, everybody knows that, and he's just sadly missed.
I remember you talking about him driving around town. You really didn't always need to leave the office because Jerry was driving around. He'd tell you.
Yeah, I was going to
"Hey, George,
nominate him to be the assistant or something like that. Yeah, he was always around. Jerry always had good information, and there's a couple times where you wasn't sure, like you're on the borough line, what house was in, what house was out, and you just call Jerry up. You go, "Oh yeah, that one's in," or
he knew all that, didn't he?
Yeah, and one thing was always funny about Jerry. He'd say to me, "Now, do you remember when this was the Map Hotel?" And I'd be like, "Jerry, I wasn't born yet." Or do you remember Mrs. So-and-so? I'm like, "No, I don't know. Where do they live at?" So it was always interesting.
I know sometimes other municipalities, their police opens up doors with the, what do you call that?
Slim Jim.
Yeah, Slim Jim. Just before he passed away, I saw him opening up doors with a Slim Jim.
Yeah.
I said to him, he told me he was going to do it. I said, "Well, do you have to call George to get it?" He said, "No, I carry my own."
He had his own. Yes, he did.
So
he probably opened more doors than I did. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, This segment today was about two people that work with Jerry as in Jerry's role, other than being a mayor, other than George. He still was in charge of the police department. So I hope you enjoyed this segment, and you can tell from these two guys, Jerry will be missed.
But I want to know the truth for our listening audience.
Go ahead.
Did you meet with him before the show and give him the answers?
No. How was I going to give him the answers?
Whoa.
You mean give him the questions?
Well, yeah. You gave him the questions and the answers.
No.
He beat me.
Well, we went back and looked at the tape.
Well, I want to see it.
There's a couple little, two questions. Each one of you had two questions that you both got right.
Yeah.
That I should have probably disallowed the question.
Well, I'm filing agreements.
Well, you don't have to file the agreements. We agree. Okay, it's not a union here. Our next segment is a person that got involved with the show a long time ago. He worked for Armstrong at the time, and he was the camera guy. And eventually, when one of us couldn't make it, we'd ask Rick to sit in a little bit and to help out, especially when Jerry was doing the show by himself. So Rick, I know everybody knows you.
It's good to be here.
Thanks for coming. So
thank you for having me. Yeah, it's really good to be here.
Well, today's show is all about Jerry.
It is.
And you were a big part of these TV shows, the Jeff and Jerry show. So you want to start off by saying a little bit about how you got involved and what you thought when you first met us?
Yeah, what I thought when I first met you guys was, wow, we do this show every week. Wow, okay. But then as I got to know these guys, I realized why we do this show every week, or did this show every week, is because really Jerry was an icon in the community. And I say was, past tense because he's not here, but he still is an icon in the community. And, getting to know you guys, I kid you not when I say it was one of the highlights of my week, getting to spend time with you guys to see what you're going to get us into, what Jerry's going to get us into. Jeff and I would joke about, well, what time do you think Jerry's going to get here today?
Well, yeah.
Because he was always busy.
Yeah, and he was very seldom on time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when he was.
He told us.
Oh, man. He'd give us an ear beat. He'd be sitting, Diana, he'd be sitting in the parking lot, window down, smoking a cigarette. Yeah. And where's Landy?
Yeah.
That's what he'd say. Yeah.
No, and I remember the trip to Harrisburg when we got honored for the show.
Yeah.
We did a whole segment a whole show on just us traveling to Harrisburg, and I think Jerry would always talk about how much information we put out to the public, and you and I would chuckle a little bit, but he sincerely wanted everybody to know what was going on in town, and I think he used the show to let the people know, and he enjoyed that. He enjoyed having a good show and letting the people know what was going on.
He really loved this show.
He did love the show,
and I loved our time together. And it's I didn't really think much about what I was going to say today, but on the drive over, I was just like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. Or, when we're doing this without Jerry.
Yeah.
And I even thought to myself, what am I going to think when I see Jeff with his Jeff and Jerry show shirt on? It's one of those things that's just, I still can't believe it. And there's times where I stop. I actually had the newspaper that had the front page remembering Jerry and or honoring Jerry, and I still have it. It's still just sitting on my table. And Katrina asked me, "Do you want to keep this?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm not ready to get rid of that yet. There's something there." But in saying all that and the sadness, we had so much fun.
It was all fun.
And I joked before the camera started rolling that it doesn't seem right that there's not a cell phone buzzing the entire time. And Dave will never know, taking this video back to editing.
Yeah.
And you can't hear the phone vibrating audibly when you're in the room, But when you go back and edit the show, you just hear just this loud, like it sounds like an earthquake right into these microphones. There's microphones behind these coffee cups, and you would hear that, and you're like, okay, yeah, Jerry's filling off a lot.
And I'd look at him, and he'd smile because he knew the phone was ringing again, and we'd always joke about the phone ringing. But
we often did the show in the Borough building on the 3rd floor, and right next to the fire whistle, and that loud fire whistle would go off in the middle of the show, and oftentimes Jerry would get it on his phone before the fire whistle went off. And he would just say, "Yep, I gotta go." And look, and that was him. There was nothing more important to him. As important as this show was and informing the public was to him, there was nothing more important to him than serving his community.
Well, he would get up and walk off.
He would get up and walk off.
And not even say anything.
And we would just kind of look at each other and be like, well, Jerry had to go.
Yeah.
And it kind of was understood because that was what Jerry did. Yeah. He was so committed and devoted to this community.
And a lot of people didn't realize we just winged it. There'd be 5 minutes before the show, and I'd say, Jerry, what do we want to talk about? He said, we'll just talk about whatever comes up. And we really just winged the show 90% of the time.
The best was the ones Jerry arranged.
Yeah, because we never knew what we were doing.
And we would show up and say, what are we doing, Jeff? And we have no idea. And Jerry's 15 minutes late, so we're sitting here with these people we've never met.
Yeah.
And it was so fun. And, on a personal level, quick story about Jerry was at the time this airs, it'll be my wife, Katrina, and we were looking at a house in the Borough, and this house was kind of run down, and we wanted to just get in and look around because it was for sale. And so I was driving by the fire department. Diane's right over there. That's who I'm looking at a lot of this, and I drove by and I said, well, there's Jerry's vehicle right there at the fire department. So I pull up. I said, hey, Jerry, you know anything about this house? He said, well, let's just drive up and go see it. So we got in that house, and we walked around in there and looked at it. And one thing that Jerry said that was really special to me, we didn't end up buying the house, but what he said was, Rick, if this works out and you buy this house, I want Diane and I to be your first dinner at the house, your first guests.
Well. And I want to say one more thing before we wrap up.
Yeah.
The game show between you and Katrina and Jerry and Diane had to be the best show that we've done, or one of the best shows we've done. So listen, I hope you enjoyed Rick. He was a big part of the show, and the stories he has are true. We would pretty much just wing it and had fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rick.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jeff.
Jerry, what do you like best about the party in the park?
Well, the party in the park, it brings a lot of people out. It's really nice. We do a fireworks, and also there's going to be probably 2 fireworks that night. I understand there's going to be some in the township too. And seeing the people having a good time. And I've never saw a 4th of July, well, it's the 3rd of July this year, but I've never saw a celebration in town here at the gazebo that people really were having fun.
They had fun.
They had fun. And that's what it's about, community and support and just people gathering together, the neighborly features come out.
Mount Pleasant's definitely special. I mean, when you come here, this community square here, I mean, right now,
the phone's ringing again, off the hook.
It is. To talk about Party in the Park.
It was memorable for me because the two of you actually were swapping plates. So we thought, if you don't mind, Donna,
see,
come on
here we
in.
go.
We wanted to relive the moment a little bit.
It is. Listen,
You're not going to fight over the dishes. You
No,
both get the meatball sandwich.
Does he get that and I don't get that? Oh, I get one too. There you go.
They're both getting the meatball sandwich for both of them. They're both getting classic Pepsi.
Oh, look at that. Look at that.
That's pretty cool.
This is a souvenir bottle.
And just for a little bit of spice, we thought we would bring a bottle of hot sauce for whichever gentleman would like to put
We'll
hot
give
sauce.
Seth the hot sauce.
Yeah.
Our 2 next guests knew Jerry very well. One was a president of our council, and as the mayor, if you ever watched our shows in the past or ever come to a council meeting, at the center of the room was the president of the council, and on her side is I sit, and on the other side Jerry sits. So that little communication between me and Jerry always passed through Sue, and so she always heard some of that. And our next guest is a person who did several shows with us and gave some good information for the town. So we're going to start with Sue, who's president of the Mount Pleasant Borough, president of council. So Sue, you got to work with Jerry for a while as a councilwoman, but then what, the last 4 years as president of council?
I became president probably in August of last year.
Oh, well, it seemed like a lot longer.
Yeah, it did.
You know, well, when you became president of council, obviously your relationship with Jerry was a little closer.
Correct.
Because you're president, he was the mayor, and myself, we worked a little bit more as a team than most of the other people. So how was that, and how did you, even though you were on council, how was that relationship? How did you work that out with Jerry?
Well, in the beginning, I took Jack Caruso's place because he had resigned, and I was nervous, of course, going forward. And I remember Jerry always called me Susie, and that's what my family always calls me. So that was a close relationship that we had, because everybody else calls me Sue or Susie. So he said to me, "Don't worry, you'll do okay." And it was that reassuring that made me feel comfortable. And sitting next to Jerry, he was always watching and taking in everything that was going on, and he would just give you that look, like, you know, that he knew what was going on, and, you know, would pass a little note back and forth or something, you know, so we would be able to keep, you know, close eye on as well.
He had a good perspective on all the council people, didn't he?
Yes,
he sort of knew. He knew all of them, and he knew things about them that they probably didn't realize, but he would pass it on to us.
Yes, and he would make us feel comfortable knowing their personalities, and he saw good in everybody.
He did.
So he never had anything negative to say, but he knew everybody.
You know, as a president of a council, people in a borough don't realize, you know, there really is, the president of council is sort of what like the mayor is in a city. And the mayor of the borough runs the police department, and it has to do with ordinances a little bit more, and also breaks ties. But because Jerry was around so long, he was sort of the other mayor, wasn't he? Or the other president of council, right?
Yes, he was. He never left us know that he was the mayor, and he was speaking as the mayor. He was speaking as one of us.
Yeah.
And he was actually the bridge for the community. The people in the community would go to him. Maybe the people didn't want to come to council. Maybe they felt a little intimidated by us, but he would bring their concerns to us.
Yeah.
And so we could work on them and come up with an idea how to help them. But I think everybody went to him because they were comfortable and they saw him out and about. And that's just how he was.
You know, I think too, Jerry's experience and his knowledge of the borough helped out a lot, because I think sometimes when council got stuck and not knowing maybe what to do next, you know, Jerry would always say, "Well, this is what we did, and this is why we did it, and this is what I think you should do." And he picked and chose. You know, he didn't overstep his position as mayor in council meetings. He interjected when he thought it was important, but he sat back and listened a lot, didn't he?
He listened, and he would give his opinion, and you're right, he would say, you know, this is how we should do things, or this is what we did in the past, and would listen. I mean, we respected that.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody took that into consideration when he spoke.
Well, you know, maybe you feel the same. I know the meetings aren't the same, are they?
No, they're not. Not when you sit by somebody, even though that short time, I've been on council for like 14 years, he was always there. You know, the fire whistle would go off, and, you know, we'd always know that he was leaving or whatever. But, yeah, it's hard. It's not the same.
No. And one more thing. He always wanted to get out before 9 o'clock because he wanted to go to the club to get the ticket, right?
Right, 9 o'clock was the drive.
So he'd leave. You know,
so he'd go like this, you know, and I'd
time
say,
to go.
it's okay, you know, we'll try to get out of here, because at that point, he has his own table at the club.
Yeah.
So it was the same 4 people, then 2 more joined, and he wanted to go there. That was something that he did.
Our next guest, Ed, you've been on the show, like I said earlier, several times about things, and you were one of the first people to meet Jerry and myself when you decided to buy this building.
That's true. That's true. That's a very
And
interesting story.
you begged us to buy this building, didn't you?
Well, something like that. But if I can elaborate on the first meeting with you and Jerry and Joe Bauer, was here in this building. Nino Berzotti had a hand in it, and I was interested in coming to town and putting in a pharmacy on Main Street. And with our friendship, we landed on this building. And during that visit, Jerry said, "Nino's going to give you a tour of the building." And Nino said, "We're going to start in the basement." And we started down the steps. And Nino says, "Don't worry, I'll get the lights when we get downstairs and around the corner." And Jerry looked at me and says, "Oh, it's okay, you can trust him, you can get downstairs." It was like a scene out of a mafia movie. I thought I was going to be hit downstairs or something. But it was so much fun. The chemistry was there with all four. But it was that moment with Jerry. And he says, "If you come to our town, you're going to make the difference here on Main Street for us. And I want you to be here. I want you to really consider it." And I remember those words to this day. And we did. We enjoy being here on Main Street for Mount Pleasant.
Well, we dropped you off, and we said that you were not going to get a ride back until you agreed to buy the building.
That's right. I did. I had to walk all the way back. Yeah, that's right.
You were not allowed back. But I know one thing we liked about the show is, and it's a shame, that you would always bring in something, to eat, and you can see these are nice but empty. Okay, so that's how it is.
Well, speak of which,
look at this.
We're going to keep a tradition here.
This is tradition, and when this happened, Jerry would right away stop. Okay, he was done doing any interviews. He would eat the food while I'm talking.
The questions would stop mid-sentence. He would stop, and it was time to eat.
It was time to eat.
It was either Italian sausage or Italian meatballs or roast beef, whatever it was. And that was one of the traditions we had doing this show. And how many times?
Well, I'm glad you remembered.
Well, can we let everyone in on a little secret about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that okay? So whenever we would do the show, and we would have surprise food show up at the table. Jeff and I were always on the same page, and we always set Jerry up. And Jerry's sandwich, no matter what it was, had just a little bit more hot sauce on it than it should have. And he ate that sandwich. He didn't stutter. He didn't stop.
He would sweat a little bit.
He would sweat a little bit. But after that, show was over, he would look at us and he would just say, "You guys," and he'd give us that finger, and we knew it was always a good laugh.
We set up Jerry many times, and during all these shows we did over the period of 6 or 7 years, I can't even keep track of how many years we've been doing the show, but he always tried to set Jerry up several times throughout the time, and he was so good about it. He just would laugh, But what other stories can you remember? Because most of the shows we did with you were medical shows and all that kind of stuff. But I know that you had other stuff that we did with you with Jerry. So is there another story?
If I can, I'm going to tell you, it wasn't always a world of roses here. We've had some situations come up. We had a situation where we had a fire alarm one night and the sprinklers went off. And we had about 500,000 gallons of water come down through the building and did a lot of damage. And Jerry was here. He was here with the fire department that night. And the fire department was trying to get a hold of me. And by the time I showed up at the building about an hour and a half later, he met me on the sidewalk. And I don't know if you even know this story. He met me on the sidewalk and he said, he always called me drug pusher or Eddie, one of the two. And he says, "Eddie, it's really bad in there, but you're the kind of person that's going to make sure you rebuild it." And it was preparing me. It was those words were preparing me for when I opened the doors to see the complete water devastation that was done inside the building. But Jerry was here, and that was at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
And that was just him. And he was on he knew the backbone of every building here in Mount Pleasant. He knew how to instruct the fire department when they arrived on scene, where the sprinkler shutoff was in the building. He knew the buildings.
Yeah.
And that's just the knowledge you have that's irreplaceable. He just knew Mount Pleasant inside and out.
Well, Ed, I know that we enjoy doing shows with you because obviously, the surprise, it wasn't a surprise more toward the end, because Jerry would say, wonder what Ed's going to bring to eat this time. But I know he appreciated everything you did for the Main Street and having the business here, and even some of the other things we did, like the July 3rd and fireworks and car shows. So he wanted downtown businesses to thrive in Mount Pleasant. He was proud of Main Street. And so you were a piece of that puzzle.
I appreciate that.
Well, I hope you enjoyed these two guests. Again, another perspective of a good friend, Jerry.
I did see, I was looking today, did you win Mayor of the Year or something? It was on,
Yes.
for this, was that for the whole state?
Yes.
Wow.
And my peers, other mayors, vote on it. I think my wife Diane and Jeff and Bev
and Marie
Dawson, they put all the information of all my background on it, and they gave it to the association. And
5-10 minutes, we were done, and we just mailed it. And
I was chosen. And my wife didn't tell me until the day of the convention that I was one of the people being considered. So I'm sitting there at the banquet and I'm waiting for them to announce who the winner is. And I'm sitting there and they started talking about this guy, what all he did. I said, well, that guy did everything I did. And then they said my name. I was going to go meet him.
Well, I want to thank our guests today. All our guests, I hope you enjoyed their stories. I know they meant a lot to Jerry, and Jerry meant a lot to them. I'm happy. It was a tough show to do. We wanted it to be the first show back, honoring Jerry. Whenever we decided to do the show, it was we both decided to do it. So we were partners for this show from the beginning. And Jerry, the many shows, we could have had many more guests on, but I thought this was a good representation of stories and memories for Jerry. As you know, I said earlier, well, we're gonna keep the name The Jeff and Jerry Show. I know many of you asked about the show, and again, we were happy to bring it back to you. We had to get started again. There was no better way to get the show started than to do it in honoring of Jerry. And, I always sign off by saying, thanks for watching and listening to the Jeff and Jerry Show. And I would always say, Jerry, what do you think? So I'm going to say, Jerry, what do you think? And I'm sure he said it was a good show. So I'm going to sign off, and we'll see you next time. Anybody hungry? Rick? Dave? I don't want to see the food go to waste.